my students have to choose 4 of the problems that you can see here, and they choose 1 from each row. So each row is a similar topic, and they have to choose 1 of those. So they do 4 problems total for the week, and they have to create a Google presentation that includes the original problem, their solution, all of their work, and explanations of their work in complete sentences. Those are the expectations that I've set out for my students on these warm-ups. I normally have them work in groups of either 2 people or 3 people. Here recently with this project in my class, I did groups of 3. And these problems are things that we've covered but are very challenging for the students, so they have to work through them together. When they're done at the end of the week, they can turn them into me, and I use Canvas to create rubrics. So this is the rubric that I have made for this assignment that they're turning in. And a large part of my grade is always, did they work together? Because I think that's important for our kids to learn through technology, how to work together, and just in general, how to talk about math. So I use the technology to guide that, and I ask them to make a Google presentation because they can all collaborate at the same time. This is the rubric I set up for them, and for students, they can just click a button over here that says Submit Assignment. And here's an example of what it looks like when they submit an assignment for me. This is one group's assignment. They submitted it through Google Docs. I'm able to have it open in my Canvas and scroll through the presentation just as you could if you were just using Google Docs, which is fabulous for grading because you can see it and grade at the same time. If I want to use the rubric, I can just click through it and it will calculate the grade for me. And this also gives a great opportunity for instant feedback and very specific feedback for students. So with this group, they did a great job at showing all of their work with the first problem that they did, and it was easy for me to follow, but they were missing an explanation for some of the other problems that they did. So for example, in this problem, and it's even hard to see, but they came up with an answer, but then they never explained it. So I wanted to make sure they understood why they lost points, which is why I was able to give them the feedback over here. And students can also comment back to you, which is great, so we can have conversations on here. Last night I had another group that hadn't turned this in, and they actually turned it in while I was online chatting or adding comments. So I sent a comment, you need to turn this in, and the student wrote back, I just turned it in, and I was able to grade it right away for him. So they're always checking this, which has a great plus side and every once in a while a downside because they can turn things in at all kinds of hours. But I really enjoy working with the students on that. Those are the 2 warm-up processes I've used. So I normally spend about 15 to 20 minutes. I have a 90-minute class period. So I spend 15 to 20 minutes on warm-up. Usually after warm-ups, I'll move into some sort of a lesson or notes. And I'm going to show you 2 ways of how I use technology for those. In my classroom, I have an active board, just like a smart board where I can write and fill in stuff. So if I'm going to stand up in front of the class and teach, I'll use flip charts in my active board. And when I'm done, I can post them in Canvas for students who were absent or any of the students that need to look back. So you can see I can post it as a PDF here, and they can look back through the notes if they need to. So I often try to use a blended environment in my classroom where I'll spend some days actually lecturing and teaching, where we'll do notes like this together in class. And then other days I will do video notes. So I'll use a flipped classroom. And I want to show you a little bit what the video notes look like as well. So here's a set of video notes I created for my students. And for that, I use a program called Jing. And Jing just records whatever is on your screen. So the kids can watch these notes. As you can see, I have it paused right now. They can hit play, and they can watch the video just like they would if they were in my classroom and I was teaching it. So the great part of it is they can hear me and they can see what I'm writing, but I don't actually have to be in the video. But this is the same lesson I would have taught, and they have the ability to listen to it, watch it. It plays for them. It's really great when we're going through calculator steps, because if somebody gets a little bit behind, they can hit pause, and they can rewind it if they got lost. For your students that move a little bit faster, they can fast forward so they can try this problem on their own and fast forward through my explanation and just see if they have the answers correct. So this has really opened up some doors for me in the differentiated instruction, allowing for students to move at their own pace through my class. They can take the notes, and all students finish notes at different times, and you just have to be prepared for that, which I am normally with assignments coming right after. But these are the flipped classroom notes I use. I do make them myself. It is time-consuming at first, but now that I've made a lot of them, it's really a great benefit to my classroom. And the huge plus is if a student misses school, they have the same notes that everybody else took, and they have access to your instructions even if they can't be with you that day.
Hey, Sherry?
Yes.
Several questions are coming in as you're showing that.
Okay.
Several questions. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay. Several questions are coming in around the name of the application that you use that displays the calculator on the video and the application that you're using to record your screen.
Okay, the application to record my screen is called Jing. It's Jing. And you can use that to take 5-minute videos. It does give you a 5-minute limit, which is actually good for the kids. And it's a free program because they can use that. And the calculator is TI-83 has a version of their current calculator that you can download for free. And they give you like a 60-day trial. And this one that I have is an older version of it that I had downloaded a while ago. And I think if you just Google TI-83, that program, you can find it online now. And it is a free download that at our school, one of our teachers has on his computer, so he's given it to us. And again, thank you for posting that link, Matt.
No worries.
Did that answer most of the questions? Does anybody else have a question?
I think that answered the questions that people had. You can continue.
Okay, awesome. That about wraps up video notes. Again, I think that they're a fabulous tool. It just gives students an opportunity to learn at their own pace rather than at my pace. And actually, just a quick story. Today, in one of my classes, I was up in front of the class teaching, and about 20 minutes later, you finished all the examples and you've done them all, and a girl came up to me and said, "Can't we just use video notes? I could have had this lesson done 10 minutes ago because I already understood everything, so I just had to wait for everybody else." And for that student that always has to wait, or that student that always has to ask you to slow down, this is a great process for them, and I enjoy that. As soon as I'm done with notes in my classroom, I usually move to an assignment, and I have kind of eliminated the days of 40-question math assignments, mostly because I just want students to be able to try it on their own. So I'll post 5 questions, and you can see right here how this works for my students. They see these 5 math questions, and I put them all in Canvas, and they click Submit Assignment, and they can go ahead and type in and send me all of their answers through Canvas and through the computer. That way, I can grade it at any time, and also they can turn it in. And I always set my due dates for 2 days after I've done the assignment, so they have about 2 days to complete that assignment if need be, if they can't finish it in class. And it works the same way when you click on the SpeedGrader button within Canvas. You can get all of the student submissions, see what answers they've come up with, and again, give them quick feedback if need be. So my students have sent me the answers. I can grade it right here, and I could send comments. And that's what I do when a student may get one incorrect. I'll just send them a quick message that says, try number 4 again, and that way they can resubmit any of the problems they've gotten wrong. And that way we can look at it together if they don't understand it, and we can very quickly eliminate misconceptions that occur in the classroom. If I had this on paper, I'd probably take it home later that night. I wouldn't grade it right away. When I got it back to them, at that point we've moved on. And what I've noticed with the computers and the instant feedback is they're way more likely to ask me questions immediately on what they may have done wrong. And so I do about 5 questions that they're supposed to work on their own and check their answers with the partner pretty much every day after the lesson. And then the last thing I move to is either a project or a game. And a lot of the games I have are actually non-technology related, which is always important. You don't have to use the computer every moment of every day. But I have a picture here. This is my students working on a matching game. Some other games that I've played are, we do relay races as math problems. I call it trashketball or basketball sometimes with them, where I put problems up. And I just have a lot of different games that I'll try and mix in towards the end of class after they've done that assignment. And the other thing I try to do a lot of is projects. So I just wanted to show you one of the projects we're working on right now. Again, in my learning management system, I was able to post all of the requirements. And this project's broken into 3 parts for the kids so that they can get feedback throughout the project. So for part 1, it gives them all the steps. And we're working on statistics and data analysis. So what I've got posted for them here is that they are supposed to create a Google form. That's using the Google apps again. And they send it out to their classmates. And their classmates have to take a survey. And from that survey, the kids have to take the information and turn it into a frequency table and a histogram. And so in here I typed out all of the steps for them to do that. We also went over these steps in class so that if they had questions, they could look back at what we typed up here. The next part is they create their frequency table, and they have to write their own 5 questions about the frequency table and answer them. And that piece really brings in the literacy where we need to get students writing in a math classroom. So they write their own questions, and then they create their histogram. And what I do is, after they've worked on part 1, I ask them to show me part 1, and I give them a grade and some quick feedback on that as well through Canvas. So I use a rubric, and then I use my comments to be able to let them know if they missed a piece of it. And that way, in the end, when they turn in the whole project, they've had feedback before they just turn it in and you've never seen it. So I broke it into parts so that the students would be able to show it to me. I could give them a quick grade, see what kind of progress they're making, but they would also have time to fix anything that they may have had a misconception on or done incorrectly before we submit it for the major project grade. And so this is the rubric I would use to grade this when my students turn that in to me. And as soon as they're done working on part 1, then we move on to part 2 of the project. And again, all of those things are posted for them in Canvas. So they can go to Canvas and click on part 2 of the data analysis project. And when they open that up, it'll give them all of the requirements they have for the second part of the project. And again, after the second part, I would have a deadline for them where I'll check their answers And if something is incorrect, they can go back and fix that before the end of Part 3 when the whole project is due. And that is a normal day in my classroom. We run through all of that. On any given day, I use the computers for more than half of the class period, depending on if I use the video notes or not. What I've noticed most about having a flipped classroom and using the video notes is it's really made my classroom student-centric. They get to go at their own pace. They get to work on projects, and I'm there for when they need me. I'm there to facilitate and instruct what they need personally, and I am way less tired at the end of the day than I used to be when I just stood up in front of my class and lectured and I didn't have any technology or access to it. So I've really enjoyed using this. And again, the platform that my district chose is Canvas. I've used a few other learning management systems before, never with teaching, but as a student. And I think Canvas is the most math-friendly learning management system I've ever found. And that's mostly due to the fact that everywhere that you look, any of those assignment submission boxes that my students have, they have an equation editor, and so do I. So even with tests, quizzes, or assignments, students can type equations in using Canvas. So you can see it's real easy for me to type in the x to the fifth, y to the third, because Canvas has this equation editor, and we use that quite often in my classroom. And I just teach my students how to use it, so they can also use this equation editor to type in superscripts of any type or fractions, and it makes it just a lot easier to put all the different types of math that we need into the program for them.
Sherry?
Yes.
There have been a couple of questions that have come in based on the last segment you were talking about, and I thought now might be a good time to take those.
This is a great time.
Okay. So some comments about your class, and it seems very engaging. Questions are, what kind of professional development did you participate in, and how much time did you devote to each of your lessons? You know, how long did it take you to set this stuff up? It's fantastic.
Okay, good questions. I spent some time on professional development just on Canvas, but I would say maybe less than 5 hours in that program, which our district intended on people attending more, but I just personally, Canvas is so user-friendly that for me with that piece, professional development wasn't as necessary, and it just depends on who you are. I've had professional developments on how to use Google Docs and Google Presentations through my school, and I also signed up for some online classes that our state was offering on how to use technology in a classroom. And I did 2 of those where they just introduced us to different Web 2.0 tools, and that's actually where I learned about Jing and started integrating the video notes. So I haven't done extensive professional development, but I would say I've put some time in on that.
Okay, great. One question is, do you use an online textbook? And if not, what resources did you use to formulate your questions?
I personally do not use an online textbook, and that is a great question. North Carolina has recently switched to the Common Core state standards, and that happened last year. So I've been with the new curriculum for the past year and a half now. And when that curriculum switch occurred was pretty much when we got our computers. And the state nor our district has purchased any specific Common Core textbooks or any type of resource for that. So most of my resources come from what I can find online, to be very honest with you.
Great. Last question that's come in for this little bit is, can the lessons be shared amongst other teachers?
Yes. I work very closely. I've got a great collaborative group with the other teachers in my school that teach Math 1 or Algebra 1. And what we just do in Canvas, if I build a week, actually I can show you, I'm a couple weeks ahead now, which is rare, but I'm already done with next week. And the other teachers, we all just build our stuff in here, and once it's in, the other teachers can just essentially copy all of this stuff into their course. So they can get the video notes and the assignments and all of that for their students as well through Canvas. It would be much harder to share all of my lessons with someone that didn't have Canvas, only because that's the platform I use to run all my video notes and assignments like that. But it is extremely easy to share, and we often do that.
Great. That's all the questions that have come in, so feel free to continue.
Well, Matt, that was mostly what I wanted to cover. I have showed you most of what I do in my classroom, as far as technology with flipping the classroom, and how I use it in the math class. So my next thing was to talk about classroom management, which worries a lot of people. With classroom management and technology, I've come up with a few things here recently that have really helped me in the classroom. So the first thing that I do about keeping students on task, and that's probably the hugest issue with technology, because we have all kinds of filters, but the students get around those filters pretty quickly. So I just make sure that I monitor constantly. When my students are in groups, I'm always trying to be up and walk around and make sure that they're staying on task. Just like you would in the classroom now if your student's doing a worksheet. It's just easier for them to get off task if they've got a computer and distractions in place, like being able to play a game other than doing their math work. So just being on top of that monitoring. Another thing that I do often is, in a traditional classroom, students sit in rows and they face the front of the board, and you stand at the board and you teach. Well, my students always turn and face the back of the room. And at that point, I can always see their computer screens. So when I can see their screen, they're way more likely to stay on task. For some reason, that just literally flipping the classroom around makes them feel like it's a different environment. It's almost like when you're facing forward and I'm teaching and that's what we do. And when you're facing back, you're supposed to be working on math on your computer. And it just gives them a procedure that they can follow. And I did find that to be extremely helpful with being able to see their screens. The next thing that I've used before, and in this classroom, this was my old classroom. I'm not currently in it, but I had students sitting in groups, and you can see these cards on the desk. I call them green card, red card. And it's just a little tent made out of construction paper. I got green on the outside, and if you open it up on the inside here, they can just pull a red piece out. And that way, if a student needs help, instead of raising their hand, this is an option, they can just put their red card out for me. And I know they need help, but they didn't have to raise their hand. And students are really likely to just, and this is even without computers, if they need your help, they're going to raise their hand and they're just going to sit there until you can get to them. With this process, I told them, you put your red card out, and I'll get you as soon as I can. So that allows them to move on and work on, the next problem if they still didn't get it, or, look back at the notes. And it just gave them an opportunity to try and troubleshoot on their own before they just waited on me forever. And the last thing that I've used that has really helped my classroom management in general, whether they're doing projects on the computer or playing games, is coming up with group work rules. And I have my students set the rules themselves. So I'll take about 5 to 10 minutes one of the first days of class and say, what does group work look like? And as a class, we come up with all the different things that group work should look like. This is what it should be. And they come up with things like everyone should be on task. Everyone's computer should be out. They should be participating. And we come up with everything it should look like. And then I ask them to come up with their own consequences. So they'll come up with the rules in their classroom that we will follow if someone is not following our group work rules. And the class I had this semester came up with a 3-step process. Number 1 is a verbal warning. Number 2 is they wanted me to yell at them. I told them that I don't yell, but I would talk sternly. And the 3rd step was they get removed from their group, and they chose that they get removed from the group for the whole class period. And that is what the class as a whole voted on. And what I found is I've never had to get past step 2 because they all made the rules, so they take ownership of these are what the rules are, we made them, and these are the consequences. And they just follow the consequences as well because they agreed to them and made them on day 1. And that has helped my management significantly in the past few years, and specifically with getting the computers and keeping them on task. I also try to know little tricks of the computer if possible, and it's impossible to learn everything about every device, and since I don't have a Chromebook, I don't know it all, but I do know some of the minor tricks of just how they can go back and forth between screens quickly, and once I learned those, it was really easy for me to catch them and just ask them to close it. And normally once I ask them to close out something inappropriate, I don't find them back in it again. So those are some of my management tips, a few of the ones I've come up with using technology in the classroom. And a lot of the ways that I use technology in the classroom I just covered. I don't take paper assignments anymore. Everything is turned into me online, and that has changed my life in so many ways. First of all, I grade a lot at home because it's really easy on me. And second, I feel like I work way less because it's just always with me. So once it's made, and that's just the great part of it. It takes time at first, but after that, I'm getting to the point now where I just don't work as often because I've already created my lessons. So this is the point, or I think I've covered most of my use of technology. If anybody has further questions for me, I'd like to open it up.
There have been a few questions that have come in, so I'll ask these questions while others might be typing their questions that they might have.
Okay.
Did you find that the equation editor slows down the students over the traditional handwritten equations?
I would say that's a great question. I would say at first, yes, because they're not used to it. And I just make sure I teach it to them. I show them how to use it. And once I show them how to use it, I think they get so used to technology and they pick up so quick that they fly through it now. So I would say the first maybe 5 times they use it, it's definitely slower for them than just writing it out on paper. And a lot of kids will say at first, can I just write my answers on paper? And I have to tell them, no, because I want you to turn it on the computer. But after the first few days of it, I have never had a complaint after that. I think they just make that adjustment and get quicker at it as they go.
Awesome. Next question. Are tests done online also? And if so, how are they formatted to allow students to show their work? Any test security issues? And another question along the same lines, do you give traditional tests and quizzes? If you can talk to that.
Yeah, I can. I use Canvas to give my tests and quizzes, and they've got some great ways in Canvas already set up for us to prevent cheating in any of those issues. Now, a student can always open another browser and Google something, but the really plus side of math is it's not super easy to Google our answers. So I got lucky on that, but I just make them close every other browser except for their test. And in Canvas, we've got lots of options on the quizzes that we give. So one of the options I choose is shuffle the answer choices. If you're going to use multiple choice, you don't have to show them their answers. You can show one question at a time. And so really what it looks like to my students is that they all have a different quiz. And you can also use Canvas to do numerical answers. So they can just type in a numerical answer if that's what you want them to come up with. And to speak to the showing their work, there is not a great way for students to show their work through the computer. But always in a math class, you still have to have paper pencil because you still have to work the problem. And that's what I tell my kids. With every test, they have to work the problem still, and I'll collect that work at the end of the class so that I can look over it and still give them feedback on mistakes they may have made on a quiz or a test. And a lot of times, students get feedback so quickly. As soon as they're done with a quiz or a test in Canvas, they're able to see exactly what they got wrong, and I'll get the question right away. They'll bring their work up to me on their paper, and they'll say, can you show me why I got number 3 wrong? So instead of having to wait 3 days and go over it then, they care so much right away that it's just immediate. They just come up to me and ask. So I do keep the paper pencil portion with tests, but all the questions, as you can see here, are posted in Canvas for them, and they can go through it and take it. You can put pictures in, and I just use that for my test and quiz. Hopefully I answered the question there. Matt, are you still there?
Yes, sorry. I asked the question and I was on mute. Okay, so there are a couple more questions that are trickling in here. How do students make the graphs, histograms, etc.? Do you use Excel?
Graphs, histograms, etc., these types of things, I will let them use sometimes Google presentations. They'll make them in there. And actually, there's a couple of websites that my students have found, particularly for the histogram, where it will just let you create the histogram online, and then they can take a screenshot and send that to me. And there's a lot of programs out there that I don't know anything about, but a student will always know. And they'll come up to me and go, well, Miss Barnett, can't we just turn it in like this? I found this program, and they find technology like that. I'm very open to them using it as long as we're still learning in the process. I don't want anything that does it for them. So it's something that will allow them to make it, and that's what I found for histograms mostly is out there. For the other things like dot plots, box plots, those types of things, I just have them create a Google presentation or a Google Doc and make it in there using boxes and lines.
Awesome. Okay, next question. Somebody is actually asking, they said, I'm in the first year of using Canvas, and there are a few teachers in the department who would like to go paperless with homework. Do you have a way of releasing homework solutions to students after they've submitted their homework?
A way of releasing the solutions to them. And did they submit their homework on paper or in Canvas?
That's a good question, and I don't know. Maybe we can ask for some clarification. So,
yeah, if we could ask on that, I think there's definitely lots of ways that we could open up solutions to students. A few of the ideas that I have just off the top of my head that I would probably do if they did turn it in on paper, or even if they just submitted you an assignment on Canvas and they've already turned it in and you want them to have the solution, I personally would just create a content page in Canvas, and I would call it Homework Solutions, whatever date that they were done or the name of it, and I would just add that into my module and I would just type the solutions in there for them. If you want them to see all the work and work it out by hand, I might work it out by hand and just upload a PDF of it so that they would always have access to the solutions and your work. Yeah. Right. And then with Canvas, there's that unlock feature as well. So another option is to post it and just not make it available to the kids until a certain date. And that's in that you just click available date and you set it for whatever time and day you want them to be able to see it. And I use that feature all the time where I'll lock assignments so they can't turn them in anymore or unlock them, and same thing with tests. So they can't get to it before you want them to have access to it.
Okay. Super. One last question here. If students leave your class and take follow-on classes without technology, do you think they're at a disadvantage?
I wouldn't say that they're at a disadvantage. I think that learning in the classroom with and without technology now is going to be very different for them. And I think for our students, technology is so in their nature, and it's so much the future that it needs to be in classrooms for them. I don't think that they would hurt if they went to another one without it. However, I think that having technology in the classroom is probably important for them, and it's a skill they're going to have for the jobs that they're going to have. It's a 21st century skill that I don't know they could be successful in the future without. So would my kids still learn math if I didn't use a computer? Absolutely. Will they be better prepared for the future because I use computers? I'd like to hope so.
Awesome. Okay. So I don't have any more questions. Let's just give maybe just one more minute here, Wendy. Sorry, Sherry. I was looking at a question from somebody named Wendy. Sherry, if you want to just do a wrap-up real quick, and that will give us, 1 or 2 minutes. So if anybody has any last questions, they can have a second to type those in. And you can kind of just wrap up, and if no questions come in, we'll be done.
Okay, well, that's great. I really hope that everybody found what I went over with you today is useful. And obviously, if there's further questions, I would love for people to be able to contact me, and I should have put that information in my presentation here. So I'll just type it in as we go. But I do work in North Carolina schools. My email address is sbarnett2@rock.k12.nc.us. So if anybody would like to contact me with further questions or the use of Canvas, technology, resources that I have, I'm open to sharing and discussion about thoughts of what I'm doing in my classroom. So again, please feel free to send me an email. That's my work email at any time, and I will gladly get back to you or converse with you about what's going on in the classroom. And I just hope everybody enjoyed today and found this useful to helping you with technology in your math classroom.
Awesome, Sherry. So while you've been wrapping up, lots more questions have come in, so you're not done yet.
Okay, great.
But appreciate you sharing that, your email address. So first one, how is the discussion board used for your class? Is it required? Is it assessed? Talk a little bit about how you, or if you use discussions.
I do use discussions as my warm-ups. I do about half the semester with warm-ups and discussions and half with those higher-order thinking projects. And with warm-ups, I don't necessarily feel that it's a grade for if you were correct. I'd rather that they get their ideas out there. So what I do is I post one discussion board, and they do that in the first 10 to 15 minutes of class, and I'll grade it at the end of the week. You can grade discussions individually if you'd like, and I use that actually in my current chemistry class, where they have to post and respond, and I give them a grade for it. just in my math class, I don't want to grade warm-ups every day. So what I do at the end of the week is I go back and check, have they posted, have they done what they were supposed to, and I'll give them a weekly warm-up grade for doing their discussion. But the discussion is very open to however you want to use it. I have used it both ways, for a grade, not for a grade, and just had them there for them to look at.
Great. Next question. How much time would you say that you spend putting your Canvas assignments together?
The first semester I had it, I was not so quick at it. So the first semester I'd say it would probably take me, an hour or so to get a couple days done with assignments and all that. But now, gosh, it doesn't take me any time at all, which is why, I have my entire semester in there and it's already done. So it doesn't take me a long time to build things or put things into Canvas. You definitely get quicker as you go. And I've helped a lot of my colleagues here get used to Canvas. One of the ladies I work with, she's been teaching math for 20 years now. And she started the initiative with me. We were pilot teachers. She was like, I'm so scared, I don't know about this. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna teach you as we go. So it definitely gets a lot faster the more you get used to it, and she's just as fast as I am now. She can get anything in there at any time. So it's just a matter of your learning curve, and I learned it pretty fast, so it doesn't take me much time to put stuff in Canvas anymore.
Awesome. Okay, just 1 second. I've actually lost the thread here.
Oh no.
So I don't have. There's one other question that I had that we didn't get to. Are you able to see the chat there, Sherry, on your screen?
I can see the chat, Matt, but I haven't gotten anything since we posted about the online calculator I use.
Okay. Somehow I dropped the thread, and so I don't have the chat any longer. So
okay.
There was one last question, and I'll just follow up with.
I think I see the question. I think I see the question now, Matt. But I just got a connection error message. I'm not sure if people can still hear me.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
The question was, is there any way for us to follow your class on Canvas? Okay. Oh, good. People can still hear me. I think the question was, is there any way for us to follow your class on Canvas to browse through and get ideas?
Right.
I think there's not, mostly because Canvas is set up by what county's using it, and so our district is the only people that have access to my current class. I actually tried this before. I tried to give someone access from Illinois, I think, and I wasn't able to get them in there. I have shared some screenshots of my class with Canvas, so they have access to those, but there's no way for me to just add you into my course and share it with you. I believe Matt may be able to answer that question in more detail than I am, though.
Yeah, so you do have the, there is the, oh, I'm seeing screens popping all over the place, sorry. There is the possibility of making a class public. So that's really the only way to have people outside of your institution. You can add people as teachers and things like that, but in a live class, obviously, there are issues around FERPA and all that stuff that are around privacy that you need to be aware of. So one option you can do is, if you wanted to, you can move all of your content, transport it into a new shell, and make that public, and people can access it via the link that it will provide you in Canvas.
Okay.
or if there are other Canvas users who can export your course and they can import it into their own shell and, kind of take it and run with it from there. So.
Okay, so that's something I'll definitely have to talk with my district and Canvas about looking into.
Yep. That would be a decision for you and your district. So.
Okay, great.
All right. I'm just going to check and see if there are any other questions here. Hang tight just 1 second. Oh, yeah. So how would having shorter class periods impact how you run your courses? And this person actually says we currently have 50-minute classes.
Oh, yeah, that would definitely affect how I run my classroom. I would spend less time on warm-ups each day, and really what I would probably do is take what I do in a 90-minute period and spread that over 2 days. I would try and do shorter lessons, maybe 10 to 15-minute lessons, and break it up a little bit more, but kids really need that transition every 20 minutes. So no matter what you do with a shorter class period, I personally would try to have a transition every 20 minutes so it's not just a full class of you talking. So I would probably still have to do warm-ups every day, but I would do them shorter. I would still teach a short lesson and do an assignment, and then maybe the next day finish teaching that lesson or add on to it, make it more in-depth, and then play the game or do the project in that second day.
Great idea. Last question. Do your students study together using technology in virtual study groups or perhaps from home? Do you do some of the group things, use the group functionality?
I put my students in groups on Canvas where they can use that feature of just sending each other messages or just they get them, where they turn things in and it turns it in for all of them. I don't think as often my students personally use outside the classroom group chats or anything for studying. And if they do, I know that they work together sometimes. It may be things that I'm unaware of that they're using to work together. A lot of times they use those Google Docs that they can share, just talk to each other and help each other through that. But I've never set anything up for my kids. I think that would be a great thing to look into.
Awesome. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have. So as it's at the hour, why don't we wrap this up?